Hey MJ traders and investors, it's Rod with Power Group. Welcome back on the Pursuit of Wealth for an MJ sector review. In today's video, we're going to be discussing tax loss selling, and the final day for that is today. We'll look at that in more detail and also going to touch on whether or not we're going to see the end of the bear market here in the next few weeks and my thoughts and opinions on the charts and on the MJ sector leading into 2022. Before we jump in though, make sure to smash the like and subscribe to the channel, tick the bell to be notified on any future updates, and stick around and we'll jump into today's content in just a second. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I hope you had a great long weekend and holiday season with friends and family. Before we look into some charting and some analysis, again, I want to touch on the final day of tax loss selling being today to do any tax loss harvesting in order to offset some capital gains for the year. Small disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. I'm also not a tax specialist or anything of that sort. If you are doing any kind of tax planning or financial planning, make sure to consult your local professional in both of those areas. I want to bring up an article here from CNBC. So there's still time to slash your 2021 tax bill with these last minute moves. So essentially it's going to decrease. If you have a loss, you can essentially realize that loss, and then that's going to offset some of your capital gains for the year, and you'll end up paying less is essentially what it ends up being. But it's going to differentiate whether or not you're Canadian or American or you're from abroad. I'm going to be focusing primarily on the Canadian aspect of things because I am Canadian. And I want to shout out to Power Group member Sam for sharing this article here. So TSI Wealth Daily Advice. So this goes into tax loss selling, how to offset your taxable capital gains in Canada. And it's a really good article. I'll put a link for this into the description. It talks about how to some common strategies and some do's and don'ts with registered accounts, specifically RRSPs. So I found that very interesting as well. Also in the United States, apparently it's known as the wash sale rule. Something that is extremely important that I want to bring up and relates to this BNN Bloomberg article. Tax loss selling now could bring further tax savings in 2022. So essentially they're just encouraging retail investors, it looks like, to realize those losses and potentially lower the amount of taxes that you'll need to pay in 2022. Something extremely important though, if you are somebody who's looking to take advantage of this tax loss selling, you'll have to keep in mind of the superficial loss rule. So this rule prohibits the repurchase of the same stock within 30 days of the tax loss sale. The superficial loss rule applies to repurchases in any registered accounts, non-registered accounts, and it's in the name of the account holder and the account holder's spouse's name as well. So you have to keep that in mind. And if you want to repurchase that same stock that you sold, you must wait at least 31 days. So you'll have to look at when you last sold that particular stock, and then you'll have to wait 31 days from that time. And another thing that you might be wondering, well, I'm seeing December 31st being the tax loss deadline. Some sites are saying December 29th. Well, keep in mind that stocks take a few days to settle. So the actual settlement deadline is by December 31st. So in order to take advantage of that tax loss selling, that means you would have had to make that sale today, just Wednesday, December 29th, essentially. So if you are watching this video, it's now after hours. So if you don't play after hours, if you only play regular market hours, you'll have to, unfortunately, you would have missed it. But if you are looking to potentially sell it, again, I'm not a financial advisor or a tax specialist, so you'll have to consult with your tax specialist to see what's best for you. Just something to keep in mind. If you did miss that, unfortunately, you'll have to wait until next year, but something to keep in mind for the future. And another article here from Reuters, I want to bring up this because it's an old article, but it does tie into my point. And my point is that JP Morgan seems to always have its hand in every industry, every sector, and it's been manipulating stocks and precious metals for decades. And we've seen 2 months ago, this article came out, they were restricting trading of some US cannabis stocks to their clients. So why would they have come out with that decision in this announcement 2 months before the end of the year leading up to tax loss selling time? We know that MJ has been absolutely slaughtered over the last 11 months. And they knew that people were likely going to want to take those losses, realize those losses, take advantage of those capital gains benefits, and pay less taxes. So again, I think this was just perfectly timed by them. I don't trust them whatsoever. JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, all these financial institutions have their hands in mainstream media, so they control a lot of the narratives that we see and some of the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that is spread. And typically, when they release something, they're doing the opposite. So when they paint a narrative, they're generally doing the opposite. And a case in point, it was proved that JP Morgan actually was telling its traders and its employees that if you trade Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, you'd be fired. But then it was later on proved that JP Morgan was one of the biggest buyers and institutional buyers in Bitcoin and in crypto during that same time frame. So it's very suspect. Again, I don't trust them, and I think that they've been manipulating the markets. This is all just a strategic play by them to play on investors' emotions as well and create a little bit more FUD into the end of the year. And this isn't the first time. Like I said, they were fined about $1 billion for spoofing precious metals and market trades. And they were fined recently. There's another article here that I want to bring up. JP Morgan hit with a $200 million in fines for letting employees use WhatsApp to evade regulators' reach. So they're not trustworthy. And we know that they've been manipulating markets. And again, I think this is just a red flag and something that I'm ignoring really because I'm not watching what they're saying. I'm watching what they're doing. And I'd love to see how much cannabis stocks they've been adding to their portfolio over the last several months and weeks. But keep in mind, if you are tax loss selling or you are capitulating in the MJ space, personally, I'm buying, I'm not selling. I don't think MJ is going to zero. But if you are selling, just keep in mind that somebody is buying those shares. And a lot of institutions would be looking to load up now for the long term, especially leading into US legalization, in my opinion. Speaking of the US, another point I want to bring up here, it was great to see the lower wicks today on the chart for MSOS. So we are set up well here for a potential daily trend change. So we do have some lower wicks here the last couple of days, and we have the bottom of the move here at 2308 and the high of the bounce at 2574. So as long as we form a higher low compared to 2308, there's no longer a daily bull flag on watch. We've since pulled back about 50% of that move. So it could be a potential equilibrium, but we'll be watching for a break of that resistance of 2574. If we break that resistance, we're going to confirm a daily uptrend. Not really the end all be all. We don't really care too much about daily trends. We know that we need to see weekly uptrends confirm in this sector before we see any major momentum shifts and before we call a potential bottom of the bear market. So are we ending the bear market? Are we on the end of the bear market? I do believe so. I do think that in the next 20 to 30 days, we're essentially going to see a rebound across the entire sector. And if you're wondering why if you're invested in one particular MJ stock or you're looking at one particular MJ stock, if you're wondering why it was down today, well, it was just status quo, par for the course. If you look at the movers and shakers here today, we had a lot of red, a sea of red here, both the US and Canadian stocks. HMMJ was a little bit weaker today, so MSOS, US MSOs, and the US sector standing out a bit stronger today, and it's kind of been taking turns. So we saw that LPs and the Canadian stocks were doing better, and now that's sort of shifted over to the US sector. And like I said, we closed near the high of the day with some lower wicks, and we could potentially be set up for a daily trend change into the end of the week here. But we know that we need to zoom out and look for weekly trend changes before we call any bottoms. And like I said, HMMJ consolidating a little bit weaker here, but we're looking for a higher low compared to 623. And then if we form that higher low compared to that support and hold support, and then we break resistance of 676, that's going to confirm a daily uptrend on HMMJ as well. Personally, I'm not really looking at any one particular stock. You could be looking at ACB, Aurora, you could be looking at Tilray, you could be looking at Sundial, and you could be wondering why it's down, but the whole sector's down. Tilray and CGC in Canada are the leaders in terms of market cap, and they've been breaking to weekly lower lows. So if we just bring up Tilray, for example, you can see here on the weekly chart that we're breaking to a weekly lower low. And Tilray being one of the major leaders in the space, it's just bringing the rest of the sector down. So again, if you're wondering why your stock was down today, it's par for the course. And I do think that into the end of January, after we have that superficial loss rule that's no longer applicable, we're going to see a lot of those investors, and we may have even seen a lot of the tax loss harvesting already done, right? We've seen on December 20th that MSOS hit its bottom, and just very suspect now that we're seeing a potential daily trend change leading into that tax loss selling deadline. So this is good. This is what I would want to see as a long-term bull. We also had support in the all-time low there at $20. So we came within $3 from the all-time low on MSOS at $20, and we hit a low of 23. So in my opinion, I'm a very aggressive investor, and I buy when there's panic and blood in the streets. And like I said, it's very suspect that we're set up for a potential daily trend change here into the final day of tax loss selling. I think that we could be set up well for a trend change. So that's what I'm going to be watching for, is a potential daily trend change into the end of the week. And then we'll watch for the weekly bounce to get underway. And we'll want to see a big of a bounce on the weekly, likely somewhere around that 27 area. We have weekly EMA 12 there at 27. Something else I want to bring up is the 10-week moving average at 27 as well on MSOS. And the 50-day moving average is at 27. So we're going to have lots of resistance, in my opinion, at $27. I could see us potentially changing the daily trend. We bounce to around that $27 area, and then we pull back to form a higher low somewhere around $25. And then, like I said, hope for a big of a bounce as possible if you are bullish and you're looking for a reversal in the end of the bear market, if you're looking for this new cycle to start. Like I said, crypto is likely going to have to top out as well. And that could happen over the next few months. So that could line up well. And we also saw some tax loss selling and some weakness in the broader market. So if we see, another blow off top and one final leg up in the broader market, that could bode well for MJ stocks as well, and could create a huge move leading into the end of January, in my opinion. But again, then we'll look for weekly bounce to get underway. We have no weekly resistance here until 33.80. And then, like I said, we need to change weekly trends. So we'll hope for a high of a bounce as possible, come down, form a weekly high or low, then break that resistance, create a higher high, and then that will confirm weekly uptrends. And we know that is a prerequisite in order before we start calling the bottom on MJ as a whole. And like I said, the whole sector is in free fall at the moment. I do believe that we need to see our major ETFs change their weekly trends. Daily is great. It's a step in the right direction, but we need to see those weekly trend changes to be confident. Thanks for joining us again on The Pursuit of Wealth. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button on your way out, and let me know in the comments below if you agree with me or you disagree with me. Do you think that we're going to see some momentum pick back up and a reversal, the end of a bear market into the end of January 2022? Always love hearing from you, and we'll see you on the next video.